When we think of Fort Sumter, we think about the opening of the Civil War, the very first shots fired. On April 12, 1862, the fort in Charleston Harbor was attacked, which was the result of a conflict between the North and the South in the United States. The story does start with the succession crisis, when the Southern states felt that their state rights were not being protected and they left the Union. They believed that the Constitution was being violated and the aspects to life, liberty, and property. The Southern states were slaveholding states, and they felt that the slaves were their property and they should be able to take them or move them wherever they would like. They also believed that their political power was being affected since Lincoln ended up winning the election without campaigning in a Southern state or even winning a single Southern state's vote. When President Lincoln was elected, it did scare many of these slaveholding states, and they made them want to leave the Union. Ultimately, 7 states seceded from the Union, with South Carolina being the first. They ended up forming the Confederate States of America in December of 1861. The Confederate States of America are also known as the Confederacy. This new Confederacy threatened different forts along the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Coast. Some of the harbors, like the Charleston Harbor, is where Fort Sumter was located. Fort Sumter was occupied by federal troops, and there was many supplies and weapons at the fort. This was a Union fort, and they were hoping to remain neutral throughout this Southern secession. Lincoln wanted to continue to supply the fort with supplies, men, and weapons, but he wanted to let the Southern states know that it was just out of preparation. He was not trying to attack, he was just trying to continue to help the fort. The Confederate States did not trust Lincoln, and since the fort was in Confederate territory, they took it as a threat that he was helping them get more supplies. So on April 12, 1861, the Confederacy decided to attack at Fort Sumter. They led a surprise attack, and they wanted to get control over the entire Charleston Harbor. They also wanted control of the fort so they could have all the supplies and weapons. The Confederacy did not want to give up. They fired cannons and guns for 34 hours at the fort. After 34 hours of gunfire, the Union eventually had to surrender. This battle was a Confederacy victory. The Confederacy now had control of Fort Sumter, and they did prove that they were serious about leaving the Union and forming their own country. This attack led Lincoln to declare the South in a state of rebellion and ordered more troops to come in. This attack at Fort Sumter is what started the Civil War.